Here's Damien.
Yeah, thank you. So we really have 1 hour. It was a long bargain with Chris to actually fit this into such a small slot. So I'm sure I hope you're ready and you brought your second brain so you can switch during the presentation because that's going to be long. 10, top 10 classic trap. I also have to mention that I have 72 slides for this presentation. So we have the top 10 and the top 62 behind. So it's a little depressing to actually learn only about things that you should not do in PHP. So I actually added a nice layer of things that you should do or replacements. We're going to deal with that, both bad things and things that are maybe ameliorations, improvement in your code that could help you just modernize it and make it a little better. Okay. Please do not code and refrain from coding and updating your code right now. That's going to be a really bad idea. So, for those of you who already have the presentation, I'm actually a retirement home for elephants. At the moment, this is a really special picture here because you've got both the first one and the current last one. That won't last, so this is the youngest elephant we have here. There will be others during the year, but you have those special elephants, so take advantage of it. You can ask for a picture later. Everything I'm going to present you today has been found in people's code. Okay, so I run a static analysis tool. While I'm talking, the machine is working and checking even more code. So everything I'm going to show you has been found and has been biting people for a long time. So just to help you understand where we are, and if you have to be aware of that, or if you should use it, I added some extra little icons everywhere. So a bug is definitely something that will bite you, and you may not see it coming, but that will bite you somewhere. Okay, so that's a problem. Performance potential, the potential may be small or big. Okay, so please bear with me. If it's too easy for you, then just dismiss it and wait for the next tip. There will be something for you. And for the answers, either there's the different way, the recommended way for coding PHP, or just a convenient tool that you may or may not find pragmatic for you. So just to tell you, here is how it works. Here is a first example. Who's already heard about strpos problem? Just 1, 2, 3. Okay, I need more hands. Okay, just lie to me, but raise hands, please. Okay, good. strpos problems. What's the main problem? The problem is that strpos string position, it will look for the second string into the first one. Okay, so basically here we're looking for A inside a string, whatever it is. We don't know where it is. Of course, we're looking for the position. The thing is, PHP will return false if it doesn't find A at all in the string, which is a situation that's possible. And it will also return the position of the string, the first one it could find inside the string, starting at the offset 0. At that point, you end up with a problem because PHP do not make the difference between 0 and false. So if you use the first one, then if the A appears as the first character of the string, then you're going to miss the condition. And you're going to have a bug. Good? That does not help if you have a double equal, because the double equal will do the type juggling and it will confuse the 0 and the false, or an empty array for that matter. Okay? So the second one doesn't help. The third one is actually the first one hidden with an assignation. So all three of them will lead you to miss every single string that starts with an A. Unless the string starts with something else, then you're going to have a problem. So the solution here, that's the elephant way, is to use the triple eagle. Okay, triple eagle will not only check the value, but it will also check the type of the comparison. So here, the false really means that we could not find anything, and otherwise we found something and the position is 0. Okay. Now a few special situations. If the letter you're looking for has to be at a fixed position that is not 0, then the double equal is fine. Makes sense, right? Because double equal and not false will be good. And the second question I have, because usually people know about that problem, is how many PHP native functions behave the same like strpos? You have any idea? Who thinks that there are like 5 PHP functions that behaves like strpos? 5. Yeah, good. You're ridiculous. 10? 15? There's 4,000 there are 4,000 functions, so we have to stop between 10 and 4,000, okay? 15, 55, what I have that, 20, 25? Okay, I'm going to stop at 26. There's 26 of them who behave the same. Okay, well, there is strpos, but there's all the family and the cousins, right? strpos, stripos, strpos, and a few others. But they all mistake a false statement, an error, with something that's empty. So you end up with problems. File put content and file get content in particular are really messy. So be aware of all of them when you're working, not just strpos, that's the only one. Okay? A little potential, speak potential, okay? This is constant defining. Why is it a problem? That looks parsable PHP code, right? Works. Probably you have some of them like that. Maybe not with an A constant, but with something else, right? Why is it slow? Could we run that? Would we turn that into something else? The option is actually to turn that into constant. Now, if you look at this one, this is an actual function call. So PHP has to wait for execution time to run into the define and say, oh, stop, I have to build a constant. What's the name? It's A. What's the value? It's true. Everything is constant. We know everything before compilation. And then it will actually update the list of constants, and then go on. If you move to this one, which is the constant, the same keyword we have for class constants, but that's outside the class constant. So that's really a global constant. If we are at that point, PHP will precompile it. You can understand that early in the process and say, oh, yeah, I know that. I will immediately update the constant list. And when I start executing, I already have this definition. That's much faster. That's precompiled. That's a gain in performance. Now, of course, it's a micro-optimization. Unless you're, defining a million constants, please don't do that. Then you're probably not going to be able to do that. And in particular, there are two other options that define where define is better. First, define is better, of course, with variable constants. Yeah, variable constants. We have variable variables, we have variable functions, we have variable constants. Okay, so here basically, you probably didn't want to hardcode the constants. They are somewhere in a YAML file or an XML file or whatever file, and then you just load them. So of course, dynamic construction will not be available with const. It has to be precompiled. There's no way. The other thing is define can actually create constants with no case sensitivity. So you could actually call it with uppercase A or lowercase a. So who's using case insensitive constant here? There's one of you that's doing that. I don't know who he is or who she is, but there's one of you. 1% of the people of the PHP code usually use that kind of constant. Okay, that's going away. That's going away. Since 7.3, it's already deprecated, and probably in 8 it will be gone. Okay, so constant, you define them with their case, and you use them with the case. So the first one is going away anyway, and for define, then you can still have the dynamic constant. Use case. The other thing you have to understand is that PHP precompiles the constants, including the already defined constant. So you can actually build what we call constant static expressions. And constant static expression means, well, you define a constant, and then you can reuse it with any expression that only use operators. So B here is actually calculated, well, those are all literals, but we can actually apply plus, multiplication, minus, and lots of other operators, and still build a constant before execution. That's kind of interesting. The C, you can manipulate arrays, because arrays are part now of constant expression. You can have conditions, not if or flow control, so it means execution, but ternary operators. So you can actually have A, even compare A with another value, which is kind of weird, have dynamic comparisons of constants, but it works. And you can also do some strange manipulations with the arrays. So there's a wealth of expression you can use that will actually make you help you to build, like precompile, pre-process the constants and have them available when it runs. Easy enough? Okay, so that's a small That's a small potential for improvement. Repeated prints, one of the things that you're going to lose a lot of time. Where are you losing time here? Where are you losing performance? Sorry? Multiple calls. Okay? Whenever you can, avoid calling several times the same function one after each other. So here, calling, the problem is not the print itself, which is obviously a fast function in the terms of how we use it, right? We call it, it does something. Calling it 3 times just to have the different strings being aligned is not good practice. So the first thing you have to do is to make it worse by doing that. Well, maybe not worse, actually. The most interesting part of this update is the fact we dropped 2 of the prints call, but we still have something weird here. Why is this concatenation, this last moment concatenation wrong? Don't answer again. Let someone else. Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, and 2 is actually the good number. Basically, print says, okay, I'm going to display whatever I have given as an argument. So I will say, oh, it's an A. Oh, hold on, there's a concat. So let me first do the concatenation. The concatenation with B, so I allocate a new part of memory, which will be the string plus 1. Copy everything, and I will display, oh no, there's another concat. So I will allocate another time the same amount, so B plus now 2, make a copy of everything into the final piece of memory, and then flush everything in the memory, in the output, and then remove those intermediate values. So basically, we're creating two extra strings, and we're dropping 2 of them. Okay? So what is the solution to that? Can we actually print it in one call and do not do any concatenation along the way? Sorry? No, that's worse. No, actually that's not worse, that's the same. Okay, so double quotes and concat would be exactly the same.
Sorry, the whole thing's not quotes.
Yeah, I understand that. So yeah, I guess you remove the dots and you put, okay, that would be the same. On this specific example, on top of that, you need curly braces around the B because of the name pollution, I would say. But no, that's exactly the same. Concatenation and double quote string are the same. And here docs again.
You can replace the dots with commas.
I need another part. That's good. That's what you have everything, except you need to change print to echo.
Yeah.
So print only allows 1 argument, while echoes accept an arbitrary number of arguments. So we're going to move that to this. Okay, so I guess you have seen the change from print to echo. That's obvious. The one that's less obvious is the comma. The dot will turn into comma. And echo will accept an arbitrary number of arguments, and it will not do any reallocation. It will say, okay, it's an A, I already have that in memory, flush it. That's a B, I already have it in memory, flush it. That's a C, okay, I have also in memory, I don't recopy everything, I don't make any memory allocation, and I'm going to save memory there. Keep that in mind, because that's going to come back to bite you later. Okay? If we want to be back to the beginning, remember we had 3 print because we wanted that to be aligned and well and readable. Well, you can do that with echo. Okay? And that's also the moment where you have to understand that echo is not a PHP function. It's actually a very special function. I use the function word because that's basically how it behaves. Okay? It has a name, it has an argument, it executes something. But echo is not a function. First, if you're still using that, please drop every parenthesis. There is no need for parentheses in echo. Okay? So it doesn't work. On top of that, now that it looks like a function call, you are now tempted to use the famous final comma at the end of the function call. So since PHP 7.3, we can have the last argument empty, just null. It's going to be void and not going to be transmitted to the called function. But in terms of presentation, then we can now have all the arguments one after each other. And if you make a diff and suddenly decide that you do not want to stop at C, but want to stop at D, to add an extra echo stuff, then that will be just a diff on 1 line, not 2 lines, because the comma will still be there all the time. Okay? So echo is not a function. Now, let's work on something else, because that was kind of very low level at the moment. Where is the potential, the performance potential here? What is the slowest part of this piece of code? You can imagine, of course, that array is a well-formatted array. So the data we collected are good. They're well. We just basically get them in an array, or whatever source it is, read them row by row, and then output that into a CVS file. But it is slow, especially on larger file, or even on small file with very small rows. Why is it slow? Yes?
Because you're opening the file each time with F.
Opening?
It's sequentially.
Yeah, okay, so I get what you mean. So the opening is just on the first line, but whenever you're doing fput, you're actually validating the row on the disk. That's probably what you mean. So that's the case here. We have the array, it goes into fput CVS, and first it's turned into a string with all the good, comma separators and optional enclosing quotes and stuff like that. And then it's flush on the disk, and the flush is slow. Every time we loop through this loop, then it has to be flushed on the disk, and it's very slow, in particular if those are very small rows. We need to get rid of those flush. How can we do that? Well, we want to keep fput CVS, because that's the one doing the hard work of turning our array into a string. Okay? We don't want to fight with turning an array into a string. Okay? If you check, there's like 9 bugs for fput CVS already online. 8 of them are still open, so that's apparently very difficult to have well done in the first take. So we want to keep fput CVS and complain about PHP not doing its work right, but we want to keep it. Where do we write a file if we want to make that faster? We write in memory, but we need a file. So we use the file memory that's available in PHP since 5 something. So first take, we open a piece of memory over there. That's a file. That's exactly going to behave exactly like a file. So we can open, write, rewrite, stuff like that. Then we do our fput CVS, and now all the checks and the writes on the memory are very fast because there's no check. Okay, it's just memory. And then we're done. Then you don't forget to do the rewind. Okay? Otherwise, you're going to end up with a file that's actually whose pointer is at the end of the file, and you're not going to write anything else. But here we actually write what we have written in memory with the right formatting for CVS, and then we flush that in one time onto the disk. If you have a 1 gigabyte file of CVS, maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe you can actually break that down into several cores, right? But if you have a smaller file, that's going to be a lot faster than the previous version. And you probably can apply that to other things like XML writing. First, writing into memory, and then flush that in one time in the disk. Good enough? Yeah? No? Yeah? Okay. Why not? So let's move on to something really tricky. There's like 3 of them here, but I'm not going to bug you with all of them. What's the first one? Can anyone tell me what will be the value of A1? Among the one who hasn't spoken yet, that would be nice. What's A1? Okay, let me help you. Who thinks it's true? 2, 3, 4, 5, false? 2, 0? Could it be 0? So there's like 6 people who actually have answered, so you need to answer from the last option, right? That's going to be bad. Who thinks it's a 1? 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 2. Okay, doesn't remember now. So the answer is A1 is going to be 3. And what's A2? A2 is exactly the same, right? And double ampersand is the same. So we're going to get what? 1, 3? We're going to get 1 that time. The thing that's changed is actually there's operator precedence. Let me stay there. There's operator precedence. And when it's written with letters, has a lower priority than equal. while hand, when you write it with double ampersand, has a higher priority than the assignation. So on the first one, what happens is you say A1 is B, and then it says, oh yeah, there's an assignation for that, and it has priority over the hand. So the B as a 3 goes into the A1. Then PHP goes on and says, okay, now that B is 3, I can do the logical comparison, combination, and I will say 3 and C, whatever C means, and the value that's there, which is 1, will just be lost. No one cares about it. And then you stop. Well, the other ones say, okay, A2 is B, but this B has to be first combined with C, so the work actually happens, and the result goes into the variable. So the right value, the right way to do it is actually to have the parentheses if you use the logical operators. This is bad, right? This actually happens a lot in PHP, in particular with this kind of line where initially I could not understand. I always added parentheses with that. Here we create an object, whatever it is, and then we try to check if it is. How does that read? How can you read that? Okay? I get x as an object, and initially I think $x with a not an object, is going to be false, and false is never an instance of an object, so I will always get false. But not as a lower priority than instance of. So not says, I want to check, I don't want to invert the next expression, and instance of goes first. So it's first a check on x, and then we've got the not. But when you read it that from left to right, it makes no sense. And, oh, well, too fast. What's the value of that? I'm sure you know how to square a negative number, right? So, what's the value of that? -9. Why? Yes. -9. When we read that as math students, we think, oh, that's going to be +9, right? Just a 9. -3 by -3, 9. But PHP doesn't behave this way, because -3 is not -3. Those are two different operators. There's first the minus and then the 3. And minus has a lower priority than power. So how PHP is behaving is, it goes to echo, I want to echo something, the minus has lower priority, so it first does 3 by 3, get 9, and then say, oh, that's the minus of that, and you end up with a -9. If the minus was already inside the variable, for example, that would not affect PHP. But if you parse it as a literal, then you've got a problem. So back to this one. Who was surprised that we ended up with a 1 or 3? Oh, that's all? Okay, more people. More people. We ended up with a 1, not a which actually works as a true, right? So if you actually use that as a comparison or logical, check, that still works, right? 1 and 3, we end up with 1, and if it's a if, we use it as true. That's fine. PHP type juggling. But the logical operators work and provide integers as a result if both of the operands are integers. If one of them is not the same type of the other, then you will end up with a Boolean. That works. So if you compare 1 and string, 3 as a string and 1 as a number, then it will end up with a Boolean. That's fine. But if both of them are numbers, then you end up with a number. Worse. What do you think we get there? If we have both of the operands being strings, we end up with an array. No, kidding. Good. We end up with a string. If we actually have B as capital A and C as P, we end up with a 1 as a string, not a number this time. So we could not make a triple comparison with 1, that would fail. But here we actually get that. What I even found really weird is that when you do the combination with the caret, right, the little hat, I don't know how to say that, the circumflex, I guess. is an XOR. And look at that. When we do the list of comparison between A and different letters, we actually get numbers and not in the right order. That's messed up, right? That's completely messed up. But we actually end up with a number in here. It's a number, so it's just I just made it to mess with your mind. We got a number, but it's a string. So we can end up with those sneak level 100. What is this doing? Obviously, you didn't write that piece of code, okay? I understand that. That's not a classic trap, please. At least the guy who wrote that was in Hong Kong, so it's fine. I'm pretty safe that he's not in the room. What is that? Just rewrite. What did I just told you? Well, if we use the caret, we actually start with strings and we end up with a string. So the part interesting here is the green hat here. We actually, on the first part, the first assignation to this $_ variable is actually a combination of two strings, not just single characters, but 4-character string. It's not obvious here, but this is a $_get. It is a $_get, okay? Just, you have to take them one by one. So the backtick goes with the question mark, and then you get an underscore. There are many combinations for that, right? But this guy chose one. Then you have the curly brace with different characters you got with underscore. From there, the $_ got the underscore get value, and then you can turn the second part into an injection. This is probably the smallest injection that is not that hard to detect, because you can actually change a lot of the first part and make it very sneaky. Use it for post, use it for get. So that's how you can write PHP code that works, that use incoming super globals, and that do not write any of those super globals anywhere in the code. Okay, let's move to something easier. Real are going away in PHP. Who's using real? Real numbers, not integers, just something with a comma or dot. No one used that? Okay, so you don't care. Okay, that's good, because actually it's not real. There's currently 2 of them. There's real and float, and they've been kind of synonymous, but not always. And so PHP decided first to make them, all the same, and just get rid of the one of them. So that's real going away. Okay, so if you have numbers with commas, then you have to use float and not real word. Okay, that's an easy one. Okay, and again, if you're doing numbers, using them to do any calculation, just be sure that you actually use precision. Okay, you make a comparison with your target and see if this comparison is actually below some precision. The only thing is, make sure that the precision is somewhere constant. So let's move on and do something more fun. SubStream, do we really need a call to SubStream to get 1 character? Again, we've seen that with the print. If you want to make it faster, you just use an operator. So do not use a function call. And in particular, accessing 1 character is a classic problem, so we can actually use that. If you want 1 character, just use the position as the array index. I've been waiting for that for a long time, but that works also nowadays with minus. Meaning that basically the behavior, if you want to get only 1 character from a string and use a substring, that's too much. Even starting with negative offset works as an index for PHP. Okay. So anytime, if you want to have 2 characters, do not concatenate the access to 2 positions. That will be not interesting. But you just need 1, that will be fine. Also, the only thing that's left is that PHP is handling them at the byte level. So if you're manipulating multi-byte strings, Chinese for example, then you will really access a part of the character, not the whole character. PHP do not manipulate characters, only manipulate bytes. Okay. So as long as you're dealing with European languages, that will probably be fine. As long as if you switch to something that's longer, then you will have just a partial part of your string. That's bad. Okay. But now let's move to this one. I gave really short names so it fit on the screen, but then of course you understand that the problem is not on the variable. Where is the problem here? Why is it a performance potential? What does that do? That's very simple, right? We get the string S, and then we make it lowercase, and from there we just decide to extract a part of it from offset O to for length of L. Right? There's no real way we can actually accelerate that. Unless, let's say you downloaded a movie and you want to make it lowercase. I don't know, maybe that happens. What happens? So you read 2 gigabytes into a string, S, then you make everything lowercase, and then you select the first 5 offsets, the first 5 elements. So you've been working the str lower to on the whole string, and then decided just to get the first part. Okay, so you should actually turn that into the contrary. No, that's not yet there, that's there, right? So first do the substring and then turn that into a lower string. Then you will start again with your long video, just make it 5 characters, and now you make it something smaller. And this works on substring, but there are other functions that actually shorten the string you're working on. Dir name is an example. You want to make the dir name, you want to make a path lowercase just to make sure that it actually fits with your convention. That's good. Dir name is actually to be the one first, because it will shorten or not, but it will probably shorten your string, and then you can do the strlen on it, on top of it. Okay? That's a classic way. It actually works also with arrays. But arrays, you have to be a little more precise when you work on it, because basically if you sort the array first and then extract the top 5, you will not get the same results if you actually extract the top 5 and then sort it. Okay, so arrays would work the same if you have array slice, in particular with array maps, for those of you who use this paradigm, then you can actually use them, okay? And while we while loop, I'm pretty sure you know this one. While we're in the loop, what is the problem here? Okay, so I don't need explanation, you can ask this guy at the end. So let's move to something more interesting. What is this problem with a reemerge? Still a loop. We're still looking for something. Just a little background, we read information from a database. The database is badly organized, so there's a list in one table, okay? So we actually read that column, and from there we explode it. And since we got a number of elements from those lists, then we want to have one array in the end with all these elements from all those lists together. So we reemerge that in the final. So the final should actually be initialized before the while. Please forgive me for that. But why is it slow? Why is it a bad idea to run a reemerge like that? Basically, yeah. Sorry? What is raising on each time? That? I didn't get that. Not sure I understand that. Okay, let me move on. But so here the thing is, we start with final. Final is empty. Okay. We get a first list from our database. It has 2 elements. So what does PHP do? So it just say, okay, I need 0 plus 2. I'm going to allocate a new array of 2 and copy everything from the 2 arrays. Fine. Then next iteration, I have a new array of length 3, for example. So I still have my final with 2 elements, and I need to concatenate that with another 3 elements. So I allocate a new array of 5, copy the 2 of them, and I have an array of 5. And then I go on again. And then I get a new array, and this array is actually 8. So I have 8 and 5. I need to allocate 13, and then from the 13, I will do the copy, and I have 30. And we go again. Meaning that every single loop, we actually copy the intermediate array and make it double. If you have a long loop, then at the end, you will have a huge amount of intermediate arrays that have been built on top of the previous one. What would be a good tool to actually do this allocation once and not every time we do the array? Yeah? Okay, so final plus, no, array union, right? So array union would be some kind of array merge. It will behave different, that's one thing. So you're probably going to overwrite some of the element here, so that's one difference. Otherwise, now it's just going to rewrite, so that would be a little more efficient, but it will not be the same as what we have here. Actually, the only function that we need is a remerge, because a remerge allows for an arbitrary number of arguments. We can give it 1, 2, or as much as we want. So the idea is to call a remerge only once. How do we do that? We start with a TMP array. We're going to read element from the database. Even those are arrays, we're going to have an array of arrays. So every time we read the database, we push that into the TMP, and by the end, we actually call merge once, and merge we actually deserialize. I don't remember the word for that, but we just use this. Oh, let me say, that should be a TMP. Otherwise, it makes no sense. So when we reach that point, we actually ask array merge to work on all the elements of this array, and it will just do the allocation once. It will know immediately how many arrays it needs to allocate, make the allocation, and copy them once. This intermediate operation does not cost much. Okay, we just have a reference on the array, and it just goes into TMP, and then later it will be given to a remerge, so that's fine. Okay, it's not costly. It's actually very fast. If you don't want to use the ellipsis here, you can also use this ugly function call user func array with the remerge as a string and the array as a second argument. That will do exactly the same for all the versions. And that's a huge potential for speed. That's really efficient. Have you noticed also that I'm actually using this short array syntax? Who's using this one? Oh. Then who's using this one? Of course, the leftover, right? There's also a bunch of us who use this one. PHP doesn't really care about the spaces, so you can actually put this double square bracket anywhere you want. Next to the variable, next to the equal, wherever you want. You can actually, I've been told, be sneaky and put a comment in between the two open. I do not want to see anyone doing that. Anyway, going on. Can you guess what happens with concat? The same. Concat is doing exactly the same. We have seen that during the print discussion, right? The concatenation will actually do the allocation anytime there's a new dot. So if you have the concatenation inside the loop, PHP will reallocate every string every time and do the copy all the time. Now, strings are usually lighter in terms of memory usage than arrays. So it's a little bit better. But in the end, we have exactly the same principle. Each loop will actually do some more allocation, and we're going to lose some memory. At the end, all those temporary elements will just be allocated and will have to be cleaned. Now, previously, we had the array merge inside the loop, and we decided to actually make it outside. So that was interesting. Shall we just call concat in one time? How do we actually collect all the data in one array and just make it into one string in one call? What is the function for that? There's actually two answers. Yeah. Implode. Yeah. The old answer would be join, but it's now deprecated, so don't do that anymore. So yeah, you can do that. Collect everything into an array, and by then now it's really A. And then finally just implode everything with a string, empty string, and that will just do the allocation once. You've sped up your application. Can we go on? Do that with addition also? Yeah, no, don't do that. The problem we had, that's a trap, so that's definitely for you. The problem we had, the slow of the source of the bottleneck of the previous loops were related to allocation. We had to reallocate arrays each time. If you do an addition, maybe not a product, because that will obviously quickly, go beyond the size of PHP, but If you do an addition, then it's just a small integer that will be just changed all the time. There's no new reallocation. So that's as fast as possible. Actually, if you switch to sum, that will be slower. Okay? So arrays and string, good. Addition, usually operators, nah, just don't do that. Let's move on. Oh, how long do we have? There's some more. Yeah, I like this one. So the missing sub-pattern. That's a classic trap because here we have a very small PHP regex. Okay, simple. And it actually collects the first elements that's capturing in the first index number 1. And then if there is a B, then there's a second element, the parentheses will be subcaptured in the second one. The thing is, if it is not captured, then suddenly you're missing one element. Meaning that you have worked with, you have developed your regex to be ready like that. And suddenly if the B, which is optional, so that's exactly what you expect, is not there, then suddenly you lose also the subpattern. Meaning that when you run that on real data, then you suddenly get some missing index 2 in an array that should actually bring you something all the time. Okay? So when the subpattern is optional and is the last one, PHP will not necessarily fill it. It will actually never fill it if it doesn't find anything to fill it. Okay? Meaning that the solution is to actually make it always there. So the last pattern, if you see the small difference is I try to catch something and I accept it to be not there. Meaning that the subpattern itself is always there. I will not use it, but then the 2, which is the important one, will always be there. Maybe you haven't found this one yet, right? Anyway, when we look at that, there's still an idea. Who's been doing PHP 4? Okay, yeah, no, don't be ashamed. I did PHP 3. Does that look like PHP 4 style of coding? Remember, we would connect not to MySQLi, not to MySQL database, we would connect to MSQL. Remember, you know, the older the database, the shorter the name. And then we would actually send the query, just like we do now, but when we get back the result, we would just get numbers, column numbers. And we would say, okay, the name of the customer is in column number 1, so I will use echo number 1. And then someone decided that they actually need to put something else instead on number 1, and then we have to change everything in number 2. Does that feel the same? That would be nice. We could actually say, oh, I just want the B, and the B is actually number 2, but it has a name. So since PHP 5.5, we can actually put names into sub-patterns. So here, the first one, the syntax, there are actually 2 syntaxes in PHP. The first one with the angular brackets, the other one with the single comma, the single quote. And after that, you have got the name. Meaning that you can actually give names, and if someone reorganizes the whole regex and add a lot of patterns first, then you will not have to change all those numbers later. Makes the code a lot better. And if you find that a little cumbersome, then you always have to remember that we can actually use the X. Oh, the X is gone. The X option, so which should be there next to ABC. So as an option of the regex, you can use that to ignore white space and add some extra comments. So you're explaining exactly what's happening in the regex and be able to rewrite that later, not just end up with a big mess of regex. Good? How long do we have? That's 10 minutes. 15. 15, okay, good. So next one that's really bothering people in production. Do not unset properties. Because when you unset property, you destroy it, whatever was the construction of the class. So here we have a class. There's a public property, so it was defined. It's probably available all the time, except if someone decides to destroy it. Because when you destroy the property, everything goes away. I kind of think that PHP behaves like, object behaving like arrays. That's, PHP 3 way of doing things. Hopefully they have changed. But anyway, when you do the unset, then the object will actually be empty. And the problem will happen in production. So in production, you try to access this property which has been unset somewhere else, and you get those undefined property available. And you say, that's not possible. I created that in the class. It's hard-coded. It's there. And this is why when you want to destroy a property or remove it, you actually have to assign it to no. I mean, assign no to it. Not unset it. If you unset it, then you have a structural problem. If you assign no, then it works. Which end up why we actually unset properties, I mean variables in general, by actually giving the value no to it. If you know about that, there's, I will not write that, but there's a typecasting operator which is unset. There is one for int, so parentheses hint, and then you turn the value into a hint. There's parentheses string, it turns the value into a string. And there's another one which is unset, which turns your variable into no. That was the first function we had to remove variables from the code. Okay? They are still here, they just have a value that does not exist. When you do this, that still happens with properties. Okay? So do not destroy them, please do not create them. Okay? There's no limit to whatever you can create, so you can create them on the fly, and that's pretty bad. But declare them, because otherwise PHP will actually slow down every time you use them. Okay, so if you do not declare the properties, well, when you declare properties, PHP will pre-allocate the memory for them and just have to fill them when the object is being used. Okay, and that has been happening since PHP 7, where most of the allocation of memory is done as much as PHP can guess it. So meaning when you call a function and it has 3 arguments, then, unbeknownst to you probably, PHP will actually pre-allocate those 3 variables and all those 3 variables, and then use them later whenever it needs or not. If you use function getArgs or the ellipsis, then PHP do not know how many arguments it will have, and it will do it on the fly. That will be still possible, but slower. And that's the same here. Anytime you can, even if it looks like just doing specification, that will help PHP optimize the code for you. Okay, let's move. Next month. Dates are hard, right? Next month problem? You want to calculate what is the next month. So you take the first day, you had 1 month, so STR2 time is very convenient for that. You say, okay, add 1 month to this date, and please tell me what's the month. So if we do that on January 1st, we end up with February 1st, fine. If we start with October 31st, we end up with December. That doesn't work anymore. If we do that on January 31st, then we end up in March, depending on the years. So PHP usually adds 31 days to make it a month, which happens once every 6 months out of 12, right? So who's still using str2 time? Why are you using those days to do calculation? Date calculations. Date time, okay? Yeah, so probably you can save you from this bug by moving to date time, because date time, as we know, has a special date interval which understands what's a month. And a month, as everyone knows, is 30. Oh, it works the same. It works exactly the same, because basically date time is an extra layer, an OP layer on top of str2 time. They use exactly the same syntax to create a new month, 31 days. Okay? So you should actually not use datetime for that. What else can you use? Chronos? Okay, I haven't tried this one, but
you can use datetime. You just don't use the specific day part of the month. You force it to the first.
Yeah, that could work. That would be the next. So if you want also, you can move to Carbon. I didn't try Chronolite. Chronolite, right? Anyway, I tried with Carbon. Carbon does the same. Okay, it still relies on intervals, so you will end up again with the same problem. So the solution is actually to use the full sentence, first day of next month, or the previous month, or the next or the last. So that will actually lead you to the first day of the next month, and then you can do some extra calculation. Okay? Anytime there's a month, beware of using PHP dates. And I don't know for specific libraries, but we have to check. Again, when is tomorrow? Who's still using 86,400 seconds per day. There are at least 4 reasons why that does not happen. When is it wrong? Okay, so that's, yeah, recent actuality, recent news. So daylight saving twice a year. Okay, there's always a flurry of new bugs in PHP bugs database about those. So that's 2 of them. What else?
Leap seconds.
Leap seconds. Yeah, how many is that? 27 from 1970 or something like that? That happened. Leap seconds. There's something like a date says 31 December, 23 hours, 59 minutes, 60 seconds. 60 seconds. That happens. The year was a little longer. And that actually happens twice a year, in December 31st or July 1st, or maybe June 30th. So that may happen twice in the year. The last one, of course, is the sysadmin who actually can go on the system and just change the date because he has to adjust the time. That may happen more often than you think. Okay? So do not rely on that at all, please. Use on tomorrow, and tomorrow will actually calculate the tomorrow date for you. Okay? Datetime or Carbon or strptime, all of them are working because they rely on the same underlying libraries. Same, if you want to know how long does a script last, well, you can use external tools that actually calculate the amount of time, but if you use microtime relies on the system, of the time from the system. Again, if the time of the system changed because you're doing that at the moment of the daylight saving change, then suddenly your script can actually last for 1 hour and 2 minutes, or it can actually last for minus 52, minus 58 minutes, which is always really weird, okay? If you want to do that, title in French, good for you, you have HDR time, which is now a monotonic counter in PHP 7.3. Monotonic means it will always progress, whatever the system. It does not depend on the system anymore. The second interesting part is, if you pay attention, here to calculate and have my number format in milliseconds, I just make the difference. I probably need a multiplication by 1,000. With HDR time, you have actually nanoseconds precision. Probably you should not rely on those last digits, but at least I had to divide it by 1 million to actually get milliseconds. So that's a lot more precise. Okay, so in 7.3, you've got better timing. Now, let's move on this one, the return of the reference. Oh, there's already the result. Why is it that such a simple script ends up modifying the A array? So we start with range. Range is very convenient if you want to have all the numbers or all the letters between the first and the last one. So we just start with 4 elements, 0, 1, 2, 3. We do a first loop, which is indeed completely empty. There's nothing happening there. We just navigate through, review the array, and do nothing. Then we do another empty loop, and we end up with a different array. What happened? What happened? The only weird thing here is the reference, right? So on the first loop, we actually decided to have B as a reference. So that's very convenient if you want to modify an array while you're navigating into it. Okay. You review the array, you want to change something like add an element, shorten the variable, whatever. So you can use it. Here we don't do nothing, so A or B will actually get successively 0, 1, 2, and 3. But at the end, this is a reference. So PHP will just keep the variable. It's just a reference. It's still, it looks like a variable, but just pointing to a piece of memory. And then we start again the second for each. The second for each say, oh, B is still a reference, and it's pointing to something. It's pointing to the last element of the previous loop, which is the number 3 over there. And then the loop will say, oh, I'm going to use this variable. There's already memory allocated. Perfect. And I will get the first element 0 and the second element 1. And each time, the last element of the array will be changed. So when we end up with the last element of the first array, it's already 2 because it had been just previously changed into 2. And we end up with a copy. So whenever you have 2 for each, first option is do not use the same blind variable from one for each to the other. That's a good one. The second, the one I usually recommend is unset the variable. When you're done with the array, just say unset. That will destroy the reference. That will not destroy the variable. So your array is still safe. The last element is not changed because that was a reference. And then you can do the second array, the second for each, and end up with a natural array that's not modified. That's probably one of the reasons why people stopped using references in for each, while they are actually a lot more efficient. It's time? No. 1 minute? Okay, let's finish with this one. Okay. That's PHP 4 style of coding. We had arrays, full letter, 5 letters, done, and list. Anyone remember that? No? Okay. Then we moved to PHP 5, not exactly PHP 5, 5 and early 7, where we actually shortened everything. We now have brackets. Okay? That's a lot better, right? Is it? No? I don't know. I like the previous versions. I'm still coding PHP 4, list and array, I like that. But this is better. What's actually been updated in 7.1 is that we can actually use index in the list. So we can decide that the W, which is the full array, will be given to the first element, and the E, which is not there, will just yield an error, but it should be a C, so it will be the second one. And we could actually do not depend on the order of the element in the second array to actually assign them into the first one. And we can actually do weirder things, like we can have double copies. So I want to take the first element and put it in A, and the same first element with a nested list, then I will put that into the B. Anyone impressed? No. So let me finish with this one. Here is actually the actual situation. Whenever you're reading something from an array, okay, here it's a database again to be simple, but I'm reading everything, a column in the table, and whenever I do that, I end up with this row, right? Row of list. And I have to keep repeating this row of list because I got an array. That would be nice if we could shorten that. Well, we can do that, right? Because we have the index. So we can actually say the results is assigned each loop to this, and I just want to get the list, which is the column, and I put that into a variable. And this variable now simplifies a lot my loop because I just have the variable name each time and not this cumbersome array. And now we're reducing the amount of things we have to read, and they improve the readability. So please don't try things that are really weird like that, because that's probably bad code. But here, I'm starting to use that a lot more than I used to do. And we're going to finish that. I've produced your top 10, so here is it. This is the one that I've ordered. We've seen all of them. As I said, it's a top 10. There's probably a number of things that are being hidden here below. I won't show them to you. But there is a number of candidates that want to take that place. They've been, at least the five first one have been around for ages. I'm pretty sure that's still applied in PHP 4, okay, and still works today. So, if you want to give it a try, all those elements are actually available in the Execat tool I'm working on. It's open source, so download it, and you can check all of them in your code tomorrow. Okay. And thank you very much. I need your feedback, so please take a moment before finishing the presentation. Thank you.